We continue now at the top of Daf Kufyud Chesam and Beis and Meseches Bava Kamma. This is Bava Kamma Daf 118b. On the previous Summit, the Gemara was discussing various ways you can return an item to the original owner. Let's say, for example, a person steals an animal from somebody else. So when he returns it, there are essentially three ways that this animal can be returned. The highest level would be to return it ladas, meaning that you return it with the knowledge of the original owner. The second level would be that you don't necessarily return it with the knowledge of the original owner, but you return it with minyan, with counting, meaning you return it at the time you returned it, the owner was not aware that you had returned it, but the owner at some point in time counts all his animals. He realizes that he has all of his animals, and therefore that might be considered a proper returning of the animal. And finally, of course, a person can return the animal and the owner never counts anything. The owner is never aware. That would be the third kind. That would be the most inferior kind of returning the animal. The Gemara was discussing when is it that you require the higher ways of returning it, the higher levels, when is it that you don't require. That was a four-way machlokas amoraim. Now, all the amoraim on the previous Summit, except for Rav Chisda, agreed that in a situation where it's stolen ladas, meaning where at the time, let's say you stole the animal, the owner was aware that the animal was stolen, so that needs a higher level of returning in general. If it's shalol ladas, so then it's more likely that you'll need a lesser level of returning. Maybe minyan, so to speak, would be sufficient. Maybe you don't even need minyan. Maybe you can return it without the person being aware whatsoever. The only amora that disputed that was Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda said actually the exact opposite, that in a situation where you steal it and the owner is not aware, that is where you need the highest level of returning. That's where you need to return it ladas, that the owner has to be aware that you returned it. And so the Gemara now asks, my time at Rav Chisda. So what is the reason of Rav Chisda? And the Gemara explains, Hoel va'ankata nagri b'raisa. The reason is, since the animal has now learned to leave its place, to leave the property of the original owner, that's why you need this higher level of returning. And Rashi explains, my time at Rav Chisda, what's the reason of Rav Chisda? B'shlama time at dekulu nicha. I understand the reason of all of the other amoraim. It makes sense, da'adif lahu ladas, mishalo ladas, that they say in a situation of ladas, so therefore you need to have a higher level of returning than a situation where it's taken shalo ladas. V'yoden further, masnisa nicha l'terutze kavasai u'tfei. If you read into the text of the Mishnah, because we are arguing essentially on how to interpret the Mishnah, it's easier to read the Mishnah according to all of the other amoraim rather than Rav Chisda. And so the Gemara answered on behalf of Rav Chisda, Hoel ve'anketa nagri b'raisa means limda lotze schutz, meaning this animal has now learned, lamda lotze schutz, it has learned to go outside of the property of the original owner. And that's why in this situation you're going to need to watch it carefully. And the point according to Rav Chisda is, since the owners don't even know that it was stolen, lo mizdariba, they're not going to be careful with this particular animal. They don't know that this animal has learned this kind of behavior. And so that's why you need to return it and tell the owner that you're returning it. But if the owner was already aware that the animal had been taken, so then minyan poter, then it's enough if the owner just counts up his animals and realizes he got his animal back. Shari kirush and nignava, he already knows it was stolen. V'achzir, he knows it was returned. He knows now to be careful about this particular animal. So that is the logic of Rav Chisda. But the Gemara continues, Umi Amar Rava Hachi. But did Rava really say this because it's Rava that is actually giving this reason of Rav Chisda? Rava is the one being quoted on the previous summit, at the end of the previous summit. But does Rava really agree with Rav Chisda? Ve'amar Rava Barava said, Haiman dechazia lechavre de'agva imra me'edra didei. If a person sees that his friend takes a sheep from his flock, ve'rama be'kala v'shadya, and the owner of the sheep yelled at the thief, and the thief let the animal go. V'lo yadei hadre lo hadre, and he doesn't know whether the sheep was returned to him or not. V'meiso nignav, and then the sheep dies, or the sheep is stolen. Chayiv b'achrayuso, so the gazlan is chayiv in terms of responsibility, because he has not returned it properly. And so the Gemara says, my love, is it not afagav the money? Even if the original owner counted his sheep and did in the end realize that it was returned, that is not going to be sufficient. It has to be returned ladas, according to Rava. And in this case, we're talking about a situation where it was stolen ladas. The owner was aware it was stolen, and still we're saying, not like Rav Chisda, we're saying it has to be returned ladas. And the Gemara says, no, that's not what Rava meant. The low money, what Rava meant was, if the original owner didn't count, he had no idea whatsoever. That even Rav Chisda agrees to. If it was stolen ladas, it was stolen with the knowledge of the original owner, and he gets it back without even counting, that is not considered sufficient according to Rav Chisda, and that's all that Rava was saying over here. But the Gemara continues, Umi Amar Rav Hachi, but did Rav really say what we quoted Rav on the previous Amud? On the previous Amud, we quoted according to Rav that Ladas Tzarech Das, that if it was taken with the knowledge of the original owner, then when you return it, you need the knowledge of the original owner. And Shalo Ladas, if it was taken without the knowledge of the original owner, so then you need minyan, then you need the owner to count, and that's contradicted by a different statement of Rav. V'yamar Rav, but Rav said, Hechaziro le'eder shebemidbar yatz, if he returns it to a flock that's in the wilderness, he is Yotze, meaning to say you don't even need minyan. And according to Rav, in a situation at the very least, let's say it was taken Shalo Ladas, you certainly need minyan, you need the original owner to count. Here it seems like you don't need anything according to Rav. And the Gemara says to that, Amar Rav Chanan bar Abba, Rav Chanan bar Abba says, Mo de Rav birakusa. Rav would admit in a situation where it is a spotted animal, and Rashi explains, Hechziru la'eder, again Rav says, if you return it to a flock, sheyesh lo lebalabais b'midbar, that the balabais has out in the wilderness, Yotze, he fulfills his obligation of Chazorah, v'yafagav deleka lo ladas v'lo minyan, even though you have no knowledge of the owner, you have no counting of the owner. V'Rav lo sagi le b'lav chad mehani, Rav would never agree that it's considered a proper returning if you don't have one of those. And so the Gemara answered, Birakuasa, we're talking where it's spotted, meaning Shatlen Nikru. It's very clear this sheep is always easy to identify. Kishanignav, when it was stolen, it was easy to see that it was stolen. V'nikru hularoa b'midbar kishanitosaf altzono, and right away the shepherd realizes when it was returned, when it was added back to his flock. V'afilu lo mana, so in that case, even if he doesn't count, it's considered a chazara. And the Gemara continues, Lema ketanoi, let us say it's a machlokas tanoim. The Brisa says, Hagonev Telemin Ha'eder, if somebody steals a lamb from its flock, Veselam in Akis, or somebody steals a coin from its wallet, L'makom Shagonav Yachzir Divi Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael says you have to return it to the place where it was stolen from. Rabbi Akiva says, Tzarech Das Bailim, you need the knowledge of the owner. The owner needs to be aware that you returned it. So you have a situation over here of a Machlokas Tanoim, whether Das Bailim is needed or not. And the Gemara now explains, Savrua, right now we think, the Kuli Alma Islud Rabbi Yitzchak, that all the Tanoim here, meaning to say both Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva, they hold of what Rabbi Yitzchak said. The Yom Rabbi Yitzchak, because Rabbi Yitzchak says, Adam Asay Lamashmesh Bekiso B'chol Shah. A person checks his wallet all the time, so the person knows, he is aware that the coin was stolen. And so therefore, my lav is it not? Besela Ladas, we're talking about the coin, it was stolen with the knowledge of the owner, and therefore with the knowledge of the owner, we had a Machlokas Amoraim before, does it have to therefore be returned with his knowledge? And that's why the Gemara says, of the Rav Shmuel, and that would be the machlokas between Rav and Shmuel. When it's taken ladas, does it have to be returned ladas? And further, the Gemara says, B'telesh shaloladas. They're arguing by the case of the lamb, that's shaloladas. The owner is not aware that it was taken in that case. And that machlokas of a pluksa de Rav Chisda of Rav Yochanan, that's a machlokas between Rav Chisda and Rav Yochanan. Again, according to Rav Chisda, in a case where it's taken shaloladas, it has to be returned ladas. That would be the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. And Rabbi Yishmael would be consistent with Rav Yochanan that it does not have to be returned ladas. And Rashi explains, Islahu de Rabbi Yitzchak, everybody agrees with Rabbi Yitzchak, meaning to say everybody agrees that a person is always checking his wallet. V'habaylim yodin b'gneivaso, and therefore the owners know that this was stolen. Shemanu, because they counted, v'chaser, they see that the coin is missing. Ul'achar chazara manu, and then after its return they also count, v'hishleim, and they see that it's back. And Rashi continues, my lav, is it not Basela that in the case of the coin, pligi ladas, they're arguing again, it was taken and the owner was aware, does it therefore need to be returned ladas? Kedefarisha, as I already explained. V'yadu habaylim b'gneivaso, again the owners knew that it was stolen. The Kamma Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Yishmael saying, minyan poter, that the counting alone is enough. Sha'adam asil l'mashmesh bekiso, because a person will check his wallet. Umanav hishleim, again he counted and he realized everything was whole, it was back. So poter, so that's where Rabbi Yishmael says poter, that's enough. Ucheshmuel, that follows Shmuel, da'amar ladas, minyan poter, who says that if it's taken ladas, then minyan and counting is enough. Rabbi Akiva karav, and Rabbi Akiva holds like Rav, da'amar ladas, tzarech das. He says again, if it's taken ladas, then it needs to be returned ladas. And then when it comes to the tleb, pligi shaloladas, by the case of the lamb, they're arguing when it's taken shaloladas, uveplugsu de Rav Chisda Rav Yochanan, and that's the machlokas Rav Chisda Rav Yochanan. To Rav Yishmael damar l'makam shagonav yachzer, the Rav Yishmael who says that when you return it to the place where it was stolen from. Ki Rabbi Yochanan, that follows Rabbi Yochanan. D'yamar shaloladas afilu minyan lo tzarach. He says that if it was taken shaloladas, then you don't even need to count when you return it. Rabbi Akiva Rav Chisda, and Rabbi Akiva holds like Rav Chisda. D'yamar shaloladas tzarach das, that he says that if it's taken shalol das, it needs to be returned with the knowledge of the owner. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Zvid Mishmei de Rava. Rav Zvid says in the name of Rava, B'shomer shagana merishus bailim. If we were talking about a case of a shomer that steals from the rishus, from the property of the owners, so kuli alma lo pligi, there would be no machlokas. Everybody would agree, Keder Rav Chisda, that we follow Rav Chisda. What that means to say is everybody would agree, like Rav Chisda, that if it's taken, if the animal is taken shelo ladas, without the knowledge of the owner, certainly it has to be returned ladas. V'hacha b'shomer shaganav merishuso. But here what we're talking about is a shomer that steals from his own rishus. We'll see Rashi in a moment. Sheyachzer l'makom shaganav. He returns it to the place it was stolen from. Kamiflagi. That's the machlokus. Rabbi Akiva savar kol solo shmirasa. Rabbi Akiva says he's no longer considered a shomer. Rabbi Shmuel savar lo kol solo shmirasa. Rabbi Shmuel holds that his shmira is not over. He is still considered to be a shomer. And Rashi explains, Hachi Garcina, and this is the proper text. Amar Rav Zvid Mishmei de Rava. Rav Zvid says in the name of Rava. Now he takes out the word shomer. We're not talking specifically about a shomer that steals. We just mean in general. Begonev merishus bailim. If he would steal, if a person would steal from the rishus of the owner, to kuli amalo pligi, there'd be no machlokis. Meaning to say specifically by the case of the tleh, by the case of the sheep, the svir lehukar Rav Chisda, everybody would agree in a situation where you take the sheep, shalo ladas bailim, everybody agrees with Rav Chisda that you have to return it ladas bailim. Can mefarish time, like we said, like we explained the reason earlier. Mishum da'an kita nigre braisa, because now you've taught the animal to leave the property, and therefore you have to let the owner know that he has to watch more carefully. Now here, we're talking about a situation where the shomer is actually watching over the item, and he steals it. We'll see in a moment. And he's trying to exempt himself from the original owner, meaning to say he's trying to claim that it was stolen from him. He's trying to claim that it was lost, but really he's stealing it. And everybody agrees in general with Rav Chisda that if the owner doesn't know that it was stolen, so it needs to be returned with the knowledge of the owner. However, since we're talking about a shomer over here, the machlokas is as follows. Rabbi Akiva holds, Kevan shenasa ganav, the moment that he becomes a ganav, he's trying to steal the item, kalsa shmira, so he's no longer a shomer. Tesulo mehemen lehula bailim, because he's not trusted by the owners anymore. Tohavale gonev shalola das, it's a case of gonev shalola das, therefore, and sarach das, therefore when it's returned, he needs the knowledge of the owner. Velo amrina, and we don't say, according to Rabbi Akiva, sagi b'das shomer, that it's enough that the shomer knows he's returning it, so to speak, to himself. Va'iu yada b'chazira, so he knows that it was returned. Rabbi Shmuel says, no, adayin hu shomer alav, he's still considered a shomer. V'sagi b'das didei, it is sufficient to have his own knowledge in this regard. And the Gemara continues, Lema minyan poter tanoihi, let us say that if the owner counts and realizes that the item has been returned, whether that exempts the ganav or not, let's say that's a machlokas tanoim. Tanya, as we learned in a braysa, hagoz les chaver, if somebody steals from his friend, v'yivliya lo becheshben, and then he absorbs that money when he's paying for some other transaction, he puts that money in as well to pay back the original owner. So Tani chada yatsa, one braysa says that he has fulfilled his obligation. V'tanya idach lo yatsa, the other braysa says he has not fulfilled his obligation. And so the Gemara now says, Savrua, right now we think, to Kuliyal Mislu de Rabbi Yitzchak, everybody agrees with Rabbi Yitzchak, to Yamar Adam Asay Lamashmish Bekiso Bechol Shavesha, who says that a person's always checking his wallet at every moment, so the person is aware of what's going on. And Maila B'Hakamiflagi, aren't they arguing? The two brises are arguing about the following. Demand Damar Yatza, the one who says he has fulfilled his obligation, Savar Minyan Poter says that the counting is enough to exempt, the counting is considered as sufficient. Chazara. Uman Damar Lo Yatza, and the brisa which says that he does not fulfill his obligation, Savar Minyaneno Poter, that one holds the counting is not sufficient to exempt. And the Gemara says, Amri, they say to that, Isvirul Rav Yitzchak, if we held like Rav Yitzchak, meaning if we held like Rav Yitzchak that the person was aware, Kuli Alma Lo Pligi Dominion Poter, everybody would agree that the counting would exempt, it would be enough. But it could be that's exactly what they're arguing about. They're arguing within Rav Yitzchak, Mar Islay, Rav Yitzchak, one holds of Rav Yitzchak, Umar Leslay, Rav Yitzchak, the other one does not hold like Rav Yitzchak, and therefore again, according to the brisa that holds like Rav Yitzchak, then we would say the counting is going to be sufficient, it exempts, and according to the other one, the counting is not sufficient. V'bay same, if you want, I could say a different approach to Kuliyal Mislu, Rav Yitzchak, it could be everybody agrees with Rav Yitzchak, so the person in theory is counting, is aware, V'lokasha, but it's not difficult. In one case, he's counting it, putting in the wallet, and in that situation, the person is going to be aware because he knows again what's in the wallet. The other case is he's counting and putting it into the person's hand, puts in a little extra money into the person's hand. The person might not be aware that that is what happened, that it was returned. Viba is saying, and if you want, I could say another approach, idi the money v'rama b'kisei, in both cases, meaning in both brises, he's counting and placing it in the person's wallet. Hadi islei zuzi achrina b'kisei, but in one case, there's other money in that wallet, and hadi leslei zuzi achrina b'kisei, in the other case, there is no money, there's no other money in the wallet. In the situation where there's no other money in the wallet, the person's going to count, he'll be aware that it was paid back. But if there was other money, so then everything gets mixed up, the person is not going to be aware. That would not be a sufficient chazara. And Rashi explains, v'hivliya lo becheshbon, he absorbs it in the calculation, meaning la'achar zman, meaning after some time, lokach himenu mekach, that same person purchased from this person that he stole from, he purchased something. Ucheshenasan lo dam, when he gave some money, so hosav aleim, he added on to the money. Hosav aleim mosag zela, he added on the money, the value of that what he stole. V'hivliya becheshbon shoya bosh lomar rei gezaltich yotza, meaning he was too embarrassed to say that he stole from the guy, so he just added in the money. So again, one brisa says that he's yotze, he fulfills his obligation. Adam asay lemashmesh v'limnos Kamma b'ki. So again, at first we say everybody agrees that a person checks his wallet all the time. So this person right away counted, found that he got extra money. When he realizes that it was returned to him, and then Leslie the Rabbi Yitzchak, the other one does not hold like Rabbi Yitzchak v'leka minyan, therefore he wasn't counting. Meaning to say, the Gemara at one point said the machlokas between the two brises is whether a person is always counting, is always checking his wallet or not. If you hold that a person is not always checking, so he's not even doing any count over here, that's not going to be considered a good chazara. Hadakatani lo yatsa damani gazlan v'rama liyadi the nigzal. Then the Gemara had another answer. It could be that the brisa which says he does not fulfill his obligation, that's when it's put into the hands of the nigzal. So maybe he took it from his hands, put it into some teva, put it into some box, and never counted it. Hadakatani yatsa, and the brisa which says he fulfilled his obligation, the money gazlan v'rama likisa the nigzal, he put it into the wallet of the nigzal. Became a dislan the Rabbi Yitzchak minyan poter, since we hold like Rabbi Yitzchak, so he's counting, that's enough. And finally, the Gemara said maybe the reason why the two brises are arguing is because in one case, islei zuzi achrina b'kisei, the person already had other money in his wallet, v'lo yada kame, he didn't know how much, therefore he's not able through counting to figure out that it was returned, and that's not a sufficient chazar. But the other brise said there was no other money in his wallet, and therefore he was able to count, and that is sufficient. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Ein lochin min haroim tzemer v'cholav v'gedim. You're not allowed to buy from shepherds wool or milk or kid goats. The presumption here is they might be stolen goods. V'lo mishomrei peiros, eitzim u'peiros, people who watch over fruits. You can't buy wood or fruits. It's the same idea. Avalochin min hanoshim klei tzemer b'Yehuda, but you can buy from women woolen garments in Yehuda, klei pishton b'Galil, and made out of flax, garments from flax in Galil, v'agolim b'Sharon, and calves in the Sharon. That's all fine. V'chulan shomer, but in all of these cases, if the seller says lahatzman, he says to conceal what's going on, you have to hide it. So then also, then it's forbidden because it seems like the person is likely stealing. V'lochin beitzim v'tar negolin mikol makam, you can buy eggs, you can buy chickens from any place. And Rashi explains, Ein lochin min haroim de'ikol me'emar shamagonvu. Again, there's a concern for shepherds. Maybe they stole these items. Mitzono shel balabayis hamashalim, they stole from the flock. Tzemer b'Yehuda pishtan b'Galil. When we're talking about wool or flax, wool in Yehuda, flax in Galil, zui melechas hanoshim. The women used to work with this. V'hein atzman osos umochros v'ladas ba'aleinu. They're the ones that make it. They sell it. They're doing it all with the knowledge of their husbands. V'agolim haroim b'Sharon, and then the calves that are grazing in Sharon b'rechav ein kol. That's in front of everybody. Me'achar shemochrim b'farhesi lo ganim. You can assume, since it's being done out in the open, it was not stolen. Lishnachrina Sharon Shem Makom. Another explanation is that Sharon is the name of the place. The first explanation of Rashi, that Sharon means out in the open. The other explanation is that Sharon is the name of a place. Umakom Gidol Agolim, who was a place where they raised calves. Velochan Agolim Bezul Megadlan Osan, and in this kind of place they bought the calves very cheap and they raised them Vishalahenin, and they belonged to them, meaning to say that it wasn't a concern that it was stolen. Lashon Ze'ikar, Rashi says this is the main explanation, to say that Sharon is the name of a place doesn't simply mean in an open area. Tanya b'menachos b'perakol karbonos. We have a brisa in menachos elim imoav v'chvas mechever agolim yisharon. It actually says the agolim come from this place called Sharon, and so therefore that is the proper explanation. And the Gemara says, Tanu Rabban, and the rabbis taught, Ein lochin min harom, you're not allowed to buy from shepherds, lo izim velo gedoyim, you can't buy the goats or the kid goats, velo gizin, you can't buy fleeces, velo telushin shel tzemer, you can't buy wool, aval lochin mehen tefur, but you could buy the wool, let's say it's sewn into garments, that's okay, mivnei shehein shelahen, because we assume that actually belongs to them. Velochin mehen cholav ugavina b'midbar, you can buy from them milk, and you can buy cheese if it's in the wilderness, velo b'yisha banan if it's in the city. Velochin mehen dalid v'heitzon, you can buy from them 4 or 5 sheep, Daled Vehe Gizin, 4 or 5 fleece, Avalo Shtei Tzon Velo Shtei Gizin, but you can't buy 2, meaning 2 sheep or 2 fleeces, that you can't buy, because by 2 already they might steal it. 4 or 5 is going to be noticed, they're not going to steal it. Rabbi Yehuda says, Baitos Lochin Mehen, you can buy from them if the animals are domesticated, but midbarios, but if they're midbarios, they're wilderness, so to speak, undomesticated, Ein Lochin Mehen, that you're not allowed to buy from them. Again, the question of what is it that the owner is going to be aware of, what are they concerned with stealing. When it comes to the Baitos, you can assume that it wasn't stolen. When it comes to the midbarios, you have to assume that it was stolen. Klalo Shal Davar, the general rule is, Kol Sharoa Mocher, Ubalabayis Margashbo, anything that if the shepherd would sell, the Balabayis would know about it, so then Lochin Mehen, then you can buy from them because they're probably not stealing it. Ein Margashbo, but if it's something that the Balabais would not be aware of, it's probably stolen, Ein Lochin Mehen, so then you're not allowed to purchase it from them in that situation. And Rashi explains, Velo Telushin Shenisla Shatsemer Shala Rachel. Telushin means to say that the wool is taken off the sheep, miat, a little at a time, that's a problem. However, Tfurim, but if it's sewn, meaning Begodim Tfurim, it's sewn into a garment, and Rashi explains here, the Inami Gonvu, in that case, even if it was stolen, it's not a problem, because Konano Bashina, because there would be an acquisition through the physical change, and that's why that's okay, that's what it means that it's theirs. And Rashi continues, Cholavu Gvina Bamidbor, if it's milk and cheese in the wilderness, that's okay. De'ein derech bailim leilech sham, it's not the way of the owners to go there. V'litlim, to take it from there, v'haroa nutlan, so it really belongs to the shepherd. Avalo b'yisha, but not in the city, shederech lavio, lebeis balabayis, there it's already normal to bring it to the house of the balabayis. And arba v'chomesh stone, if it's 4 or 5 sheep, shechisrona nikar beider, that's going to be obvious if it's taken. Ve'in yochli shamid v'lomer zev tarfa, you can't say, oh, a wolf just took that particular animal. And finally it said, baitos lochin mehen, if they're domesticated, you can buy. Shari balabayis yodeim minyanim, because again, the balabayis knows how many there were, he'll be aware of it, so it's likely not stolen, whereas if it's midbarios, it's more likely stolen, that's a problem. And the Gemara continues, Amar Mar, the master said, lochin mehen dalid v'heit son, dalid v'heit gizin, you can purchase from them 4 or 5 sheep, 4 or 5 fleeces. And the Gemara says, Hashti yesh lomar arba zavnina, now if we're saying that you can purchase 4, so chamisha miboy, do we even need to say you can purchase 5? Of course you can purchase 5, because again, the owner will certainly notice if it was stolen, so clearly the shepherd didn't steal it. And the Gemara says, Amar Rav Chisda says, Arba mitoch chamisha. What we mean to say over here is 4 out of 5. Let's say there were only 5 sheep. He would certainly notice if 4 of them went missing, so if they're 4 out of 5, that is okay. Vika diamri, there are those that say, Amar Rav Chisda says, Arba me eder katan. It means you can buy 4 if it is a small flock. Again, that is something that is going to be noticeable. The chamesh me eder gadol, you can buy 5 even if it's a larger flock. Again, that is something that is noticeable. And the Gemara continues, Hagufa kasha, but it's internally contradictory what we said above. Amr dalid v'heit son, we said 4 or 5 sheep, dalid v'heit gizin, 4 or 5 fleeces, and that implies dalid v'heit in aval shalosh lo. That sounds like 4 or 5 is okay, but 3 is not okay. And Masefa, now let's look at the end of what we said. Aval lo shtei tzon, it says you can't do 2 sheep. Hashalosh zavnina, that sounds like you could buy 3 sheep. So the contradiction, by 3, are you allowed to buy 3 or you're not allowed to buy 3? And the Gemara answers, Lokash, is not difficult. Habiv Rais, in one case we're talking where it's a healthy animal, where we're talking about healthy animals, the owner would surely notice if it was stolen, and therefore we can assume it's not stolen. And Habika Chishta, but here we're talking about where it's weaker, frail animals, there the owner is not paying so much attention, so there's a concern that the animals might be stolen. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots. We said in the above Bryce, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says, Baitos lochin mehen, you can buy the domesticated animals from them. Midbarius ein lochin mehen v'chula, but you can't buy the undomesticated animals from them. And the Gemara says, Iboy Lahu, they had the following question. Rabbi Yehuda, Aresha Koyu L'chumr, is Rabbi Yehuda going on the beginning of the Bryce and he's being strict? Odil Ma'aseifa Koyu L'kula, or maybe he's going on the end of the Bryce and he's being lenient. And the Gemara explains it as follows. Aresha Koyu L'chumr, he could be going on the beginning of the Bryce and he's being strict, meaning, Diyamar Lochin Mehen Arba V'chamisha Tzon. It said in the beginning of the Bryce so that we can purchase from them 4 or 5 sheep. And so he's being strict and saying, Hani Mili Baitos, but even that leniency that you're allowed to purchase 4 or 5 is only if they're domesticated. Aval Midbarius, but if it's undomesticated, Afilu Arba V'chamisha Lo, even 4 or 5 you can't purchase. That's one possibility. Odilmor, maybe Aseifa Koyu L'kula, maybe Rabbi Yehuda is going on the end of the Bryce and he's being lenient. Da'amar Aval Lo Shtei Tzon V'lo Shtei Gizin, because it said you can't do 2 sheep, you can't do 2 fleeces. And so Hani Mili Midbarios, that's true if it's not domesticated, Aval Baitos, but if it's domesticated, Shtayim Nami Lochin, even 2 is okay to purchase. That's the other understanding, the other possible understanding of Rabbi Yehuda. And the Gemara says, Tashma, come in here the following proof. The Tanya, as we learned in the Bryce, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says, Lochin baitos mehen, you can buy domesticated from them. Vein lochin mehen midboris, you can't buy undomesticated. Uvechol makam, but in all situations, lochin mehen arba v'chamish tzon, you can buy 4 or 5 sheep. Therefore, it does sound like Rabbi Yehuda is being lenient, as we'll see. We will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Kuf Yud Tes Amud Aleph.